The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, different parts of the world that you're from. I hope everybody is having a good day or evening. We are here delighted to have, as part of our IFEES GEDC IUCEE webinar series this week, a really eminent friend and of IUCEE and IFEES and GEDC for many, many years, and an eminent statesman and a distinguished leader of engineering education in India. Dr. R. Natarajan. He will be talking about the new Indian national education policy that has received a lot of news all over India and around the world. He has served as the director of IIT Madras from 1995 to 2001, and as chairman of AICTE, which is statutory board of the Government of India from 2001 to 2004. He was the vice president of the Indian National Academy of Engineering during 2002-2006, and chairman of the Research Council of Central Field Research Institute, Dhanbad, from 1995 to 2005. He was a member of the India-China Eminent Persons Group during 2002-2004. He was still recently chairman of the board for IT and Education Standards of Karnataka and co-chairman of the Engineering Education Forum of the Indian National Academy of Engineering. So it's with great pleasure that we are looking forward to hearing from your experiences and wisdom about this new policy that has taken over what's happening to engineering education in general all over India. So thank you, sir, and I will make you a presenter in just a second, and you should be ready to go. Okay, now you can click show my screen once again. Perfect, you're all set.
Right. First of all, my thanks to both Hans Hoyer and Krishna Vedula for arranging this webinar, where I propose to be speaking about the new education policy, NEP, which was approved by the cabinet 3 months ago, July 29th, 2020. There was a lot of work done before the policy was circulated, comments received, and finally announced. And several major changes have been proposed. So I want to look at the major highlights of this new education policy. It was evolved by the Government of India, the Ministry of Human Resource Development, as the National Education Policy 2020. It has a vision, and the vision is to have an India-centered education system that contributes directly to transforming our nation sustainably into an equitable and vibrant knowledge society by providing high-quality education to all, both quality as well as quantity. Let us take a look at the major transformational reforms in the education sector since we got independence in 1947. The first major education commission actually existed between 48 and 49, making several important policy changes. Secondary Education Commission in 52, Education Commission under Dr. D.S. Kothari, who was the Education Secretary. And it was the first time a large number of very important recommendations were made. And for a number of years, many changes took place as a result of these recommendations. Then we had the National Policy on Education 1968, and there was a constitutional amendment in 1976. Before that, education was in the state list. Only the state government had a say in making policies and so on. But in 1976, the central government also came into the picture, or maybe it was vice versa. So it was on the concurrent list, basically meaning that both the state and the center, they had equal responsibilities. And then in 1986, a landmark national policy on education was proposed after a year of countrywide seminars and workshops and so on. It was later modified slightly in 1992. The major modification was there was a drastic reduction in the number of entrance examinations to different courses. Then T.S.R. Subramaniam was a cabinet secretary. He submitted a report in 2016. Unfortunately, he's no more, he passed away. Now, the Kasturi Rangan committee report was announced in May 2019, and that's what we'll be discussing, which has been approved by the central cabinet. A considerable amount of consultation was done throughout the country First, online website, then a number of local bodies were consulted. They were sent the draft policy and their opinions and the recommendations and the feedback was obtained. The draft NEP was published in 22 languages. As you know, India has 22 official languages, and therefore it has to be published in all these languages. There was an education dialogue, not one dialogue, many dialogues with the MPs from several states. A special meeting of CABE, which is the Central Advisory Board on Education, was held in September of 2019, and the Parliamentary Standing Committee on HRD was briefed in November 2019. Now, the major reforms, in a nutshell, to point out the major reforms, the gross enrollment ratio at the moment is about 25%, and it is expected to be double by 2035. And holistic and multidisciplinary education, giving a lot of flexibility of subjects. Multiple entry and multiple exit as the revolutionary concept here. UG program of 3 or 4 years, PG program of 1 or 2 years, integrated 5-year bachelor's or master's, and MPhil, which had existed for a long time, to be discontinued. It was an intermediate stage between the bachelor's and the doctoral degrees. Credit transfer and academic bank of credits, and HEIs, or higher education institutions, classified as research intensive, teaching intensive universities, and autonomous degree granting colleges. And model multidisciplinary education and research universities in or near every district. Graded autonomy including academic, administrative, and financial autonomy. And India is one of 4 countries in this area which were under British colonial rule. We have been having the affiliation system. At the moment we have the affiliation system, only about 20% of the higher education institutions have been given autonomy. And in 15 years, the policy envisages that affiliated system will be phased out. A national mission on mentoring, independent boards of governors for institutions who can take decisions on their own without having to consult the government, a single regulator for higher education. Legal and medical education are exempted from this. And this is a very major recommendation. And if it is implemented, I'm sure that many things have to be changed, including some rules and regulations and acts and so on. Online self-disclosure based transparent system for approvals in place of inspections as they exist now. Common norm for public and private HEIs, it exists even now. Private philanthropic partnership. Fee fixation, this has been a major problem, particularly since the private sector started organizing several institutions, because the private sector means that all the expenses, except for research, for instance, which can be got through sponsored research projects, all of them, they are self-financing or self-funding. And public investment in education sector for the government institutions to reach 6% of GDP at the earliest. This has been pointed out several times over the past 30, 40 years. It has not exceeded about 2 to 2.5%. Continuing on with the major reforms, a National Research Foundation will be constituted on the lines of the National Science Foundation in the US. Internationalization of education, a couple of very important changes. Integration of vocational, teacher, and professional education. Setting up of new quality HEIs has been made easier. There used to be a number of hurdles, but now at the moment it has been eased, and it hasn't happened yet, but it will be eased. Standalone higher education institutions and professional education institutions will evolve into multidisciplinary institutions. It is again another major recommendation. We'll look at some details a little later on. Special education zone for disadvantaged regions, National Institute for the Old Languages, Pali, Persian, and Prakrit, National Education Technology Forum, another important recommendation, and the Ministry of Human Resource Development to be renamed as Ministry of Education, bringing back the focus on education. This has actually happened already. There are some fundamental principles of this policy. Let me go through them. The purpose of the education, it is recognized, is to develop good human beings capable of rational thought and action, possessing compassion and empathy, courage and resilience, scientific temper and creative imagination, with sound ethical moorings and values. Feel-good principle of this policy, which encompasses all important aspects of education. So what does it do? It aims at producing engaged, productive, and contributing citizens for building an equitable, inclusive, and plural society as envisaged by our Constitution. So what the Constitution promised, it is reiterated that these things will be done. They also try to define a good educational institution, including both social and intellectual aspects. A good educational institution is one, it is said, where every student feels welcomed and cared for, where a safe and stimulating learning environment exists, where a wide range of learning experiences are offered, and where good physical infrastructure and appropriate resources conducive to learning are available to all students. So attaining these qualities must be the goal of every educational institution. When HEIs, they make their strategic plans, it is expected that these aspects would be taken into account. Now, there are sections on primary education and secondary education making very important changes in the existing system. But since we are involved in higher education, I will only look at aspects of higher education. In terms of setting up quality universities and colleges and a new and forward-looking vision for India's higher education system. As in every other country, higher education is important for economic development, industrial development, and also social harmony. So this is what is envisioned here as indicated in the Constitution, a democratic, just, socially conscious, cultured, and humane nation upholding liberty, equality, fraternity, and justice for all. A political statement, but that's what the Constitution demands. Higher education, in a practical sense, significantly contributes towards sustainable livelihoods and economic development of the nation. And the country is moving towards a knowledge economy and society, as do other countries. They have identified the major problems currently faced with the higher education system in India. As a result of the experience of many years, these are the severely constraining major problems. Fragmented higher education system without coherence, there is a bit of coherence, but more coherence is expected to be included. Less emphasis on the development of cognitive skills and learning outcomes. This is again a problem, major problem. A rigid separation of disciplines with early specialization and streaming of students into narrow areas of study. Limited access in socio-economically disadvantaged areas, and limited teacher and institutional autonomy. The granting of autonomy to institutions and teachers is one of the major objectives of this policy. Many key changes to the current system are proposed. Some of them are here. Moving towards an HEI consisting of large multidisciplinary universities and colleges with at least one in or near every district, and with more HEIs across India that offer medium of instruction or programs in local and Indian languages. Moving towards a more multidisciplinary undergraduate education, moving towards faculty and institutional autonomy, revamping the curriculum, pedagogy, assessment, and student support for enhanced student experiences, and also reaffirming the integrity of all faculty and institutional leadership positions. Establishment of a national research foundation, as I pointed out, similar to the National Science Foundation in the US, to fund outstanding peer-reviewed research. And another important point is about governance. Governance of HEI by highly qualified independent boards having academic and administrative autonomy, not determined by government diktat. Light but tight, this is a phrase that is used here in the policy, it's a buzzword. Light but tight regulation by a single regulator for higher education. Many implications here. Tight meaning the enforceability being strict. Light meaning that you don't demand too much, but whatever you demand to be implemented truthfully. Increased access, equity, and inclusion. These are all, again, buzzwords, but they have deep meaning. Now, transform the entire regulatory system of higher education. The feeling was that regulation of higher education had been too heavy-handed for decades. Too much has been attempted to be regulated with too little effect. And there have been heavy concentrations of power within a few bodies, resulting in lack of accountability. This is proposed to be changed through restructuring of the regulatory system, complete overhaul. To address the above-mentioned issue, the regulatory system of higher education will ensure that there are 4 major distinct functions: regulation, accreditation, funding, and academic standard setting will be performed by distinct, independent, and empowered bodies, essentially to eliminate concentrations of power. So a Higher Education Commission of India, HECI, is proposed to be formed, which will include these 4 different points that I mentioned. So let us look at the 4 verticals of HECI. The first one is National Higher Education Regulatory Council. It will function as the single point regulator for the higher education sector, including teacher education, but excluding medical and legal education. So it eliminates the duplication and disjunction of regulatory efforts by multiple regulatory agencies. Sometimes there have also been conflict of rules and regulations, but all that is expected to be removed. So it will require a relook and repealing of existing acts. If you want to restructure, if you want to not start from scratch, but existing acts have to be looked at and they may have to be repealed. So objective is a single point regulation. Again, the phrase light but tight, and a facilitative manner, meaning that a few important matters, particularly financial probity, good governance, and the full online and offline public sector, public self-disclosure of all financial matters. And there is also a grievance redressal mechanism which is provided. And extensive feedback would be received in a continuous fashion from, particularly from differently able students, because their welfare is one of the objectives of the new policy, so that the feedback will help us to make changes, mid-course corrections. The second vertical will be a meta-accrediting body called the National Accreditation Council. At the moment, we have, for example, the National Board of Accreditation, the National Assessment and Accreditation Council, NAC for general education, but all these things will be combined into an overarching body, the National Accreditation Council. And of course, accreditation will be based on the normal basic norms, public self-disclosure, etc. The task to function as a recognized accreditor shall be awarded to an appropriate number of institutions by NAC, because one single institution cannot deal with a very large number of universities and institutions we have. We have at the moment approximately 4,000 engineering colleges and about 900 universities. To accredit all these, the large number of educational institutions we have, we require a large number of accrediting bodies. Arrangements are being made in order to have this. And in the short term, a robust system of graded accreditation will be established. All higher education institutions will propose their institutional development plans, IDPs. This is arises from the experience we have had with the TEQUIP program for technical education. TEQUIP, TEQIP, Technical Education Quality Improvement Program, where the institutions were funded. It was the World Bank and the Government of India partnership. The institutions proposed their strategic plans and also indicated the resources required to implement these strategic plans. And the funding was provided, and detailed monitoring and evaluation was done. And I believe it has been a very successful program, even though not all the objectives were ultimately reached. So again, accreditation will become a binary process, yes or no, because earlier both NAC and NBA had different levels of accreditation that will go. The third vertical will be the Higher Education Grants Council, which will carry out funding and financing of higher education. This will be a larger body than the University Grants Commission that we have now. And it will be entrusted with the disbursement of scholarships and financing and so on. The fourth vertical will be the General Education Council, which will frame expected learning outcomes for higher education programs, which are also called graduate attributes. At the moment, we have a national skills qualifications framework, similar to what exists in, for example, UK and Australia and so on. At the moment, it is proposed that similarly, there will be a national higher education qualification, NHEQF, only two will work in tandem, which will allow for transferability from the academic stream to the vocational stream. And GEC will also set up facilitative norms for issues such as credit transfer equivalence. So there will be two parallel streams, one higher education qualification framework, another skills qualification framework, and lateral mobility will be enabled. Now, what about the professional councils we have? Like ABIT is a combination of federation of 34, the last count that I looked at it, 34 professional societies. All of them have respectability and responsibilities. We have several professional councils, starting from the Indian Council for Agricultural Research, Veterinary Council of India, National Council for Teacher Education, Council of Architecture, Pharmacy Council of India, National Council for Vocational Education and Training, and so on. They will have a new role as professional standard-setting bodies. They will interact with the universities in terms of curricular reforms, pedagogical reforms, and things like that. But they will not have a regulatory role. At the moment, Council of Architecture and Pharmacy Council of India have some regulatory role, but they will give up this regulatory role to this overall entity. So those are the four verticals of the newly structured higher education system. One of the major issues when the private sector entered education, setting up institutions, the problem or the concern about curbing of commercialization of education, because higher education is considered to be a public good. It is considered to be a not-for-profit operation, even though in some countries there are for-profit institutions. For example, in the US, you have for-profit institutions. In India, from the beginning, education is considered to be a not-for-profit activity. So if any excess of investment, income over expenditure is obtained, then it has to be reinvested in the education sector. It cannot be treated as profit. Another important lesson we learned through the implementation of the Technical Education Quality Improvement Program was effective governance and leadership for higher education institutions. It was found it is only these two, proper attention to these two aspects, that can result in the HEIs becoming centers of excellence. The common feature of all world-class institutions globally, including India, has been the existence of strong self-governance and outstanding merit-based appointments of institutional leaders. So in governance, we realized that the boards of governors, which essentially oversee the governance of the institution, have explicit responsibilities which are not always followed. For example, they are expected to help the institution come up with a strategic plan, and they will hold the director of that institution and the other structures to implement the strategic plan, and the board of governors would monitor this process. Now, engineering is a part of the professional education streams. So preparation of professionals it has pointed out, reiterating what had been implicitly known. First of all, the ethics and importance of public purpose and education in the discipline and then education for practice. It must involve critical and interdisciplinary thinking, discussion, debate, research, and innovation. Therefore, professional education should not take place in the isolation of one specialty. Every institution is considered to become a multidisciplinary institution. So professional education is an important recommendation, becomes an integral part of the overall higher education system. At the moment, we have several standalone agricultural universities, legal universities, health science universities, technical universities, and standalone institutions in other fields. And the objective will be to convert them into multidisciplinary institutions offering holistic and multidisciplinary education. All institutions offering either professional or general education will aim to organically evolve into institutions or clusters offering both seamlessly and in an integrated manner by 2030. We have given ourselves 10 years to do this. And online and digital education, which are becoming more and more important in the current scenario of the pandemic affecting all our activities, and also ensuring equitable use of technology. This is something which all institutions are actually practicing now, but this may become the norm if it is seen that the same objectives are met with different routes of using enabling technologies. Then this policy provides a guideline on how to get that done. We have several online teaching platforms and tools. One of them is Swayam, which is a Hindi word, but it stands for, as an acronym, Study Webs of Active Learning for Young Aspiring Minds. It is an Indian MOOC, massive open online course. Diksha is another platform which provides a considerable amount of support to teachers. So both of these will be, the use will be intensified, and a larger part of the country will be covered by these two platforms. And digital divide, it exists in all countries, so the advanced or less developed, and essentially meaning that the availability of technology, digital technology, is not uniform across the country. That is a divide. We started about 30, 40 years ago. Our space research organization used television, radio, and community radio to address this digital divide, and a number of courses were offered through this medium, and a considerable amount of feedback is available. These programs will be made available 24/7 in different languages. You know, in India, as I said, we have 22 languages, and you have to provide the resources in all these 22 languages. Assessment is another important component of education, apart from curriculum and pedagogy. An online assessment and examination, it has its own intrinsic issues and problems, but that will be tackled through, for example, this PARAK acronym: Performance, Assessment, Review, and Analysis for Holistic Development. As of now, as a result of the pandemic, many institutions have actually transformed their processes into new ones, which are amenable to implementation through new technologies. And blended models of learning, face-to-face plus online, that's also happening now. Experiments are being performed, and these will be promoted. And laying down the standards, of course, is something which is important if you want to certify your graduates, for example, in engineering education, which are acceptable to the different professional societies. Now, part 4, it talks about the real crux of the issues, namely implementation. You may make some excellent policies, but if you do not provide for implementation, if you don't make it happen, then you won't achieve the fruits of your policies. So some of the means are strengthening the Central Advisory Board of Education, which is the umbrella body for advising all aspects of education. And financing, affordable and quality education for all is an important objective. And so the focus is on implementation. At the moment, AICT is organizing several brainstorming sessions, seminars, workshops, and so on, all across the country, essentially to come up with solutions or implementation strategies in order to derive the maximum benefit from the policies. Now I will take you through a few important people whose influence, actually you can see in the policies and what they think about the policy when it has finally come out. Prime Minister tried to explain the new education policy, and in the inaugural session, he pointed out that the difference from the old education policy is the old ones focused on how to think, as opposed to the new policy, which he said helps us to come up with strategies for determining what to think, how to think, as opposed to what to think. And the new policy attaches a great deal of importance to research and technology. And quality education, he pointed out, is required in India, as in other countries. And the institutes to provide better education require autonomy. So that is the reason it has been decided that all the institutions, affiliated institutions, will become autonomous in another 15 years. He also remembered APJ Abdul Kalam, who was our president till a few years ago, and he was a space scientist who became an educationist. And his dream was to provide education to make quality human beings. The aspect of humanity, the quality human being, he used to point out. So the Prime Minister also referred to it. Teacher training, considerable effort to enhance the training of teachers and giving them tools and techniques in order to do their job better. So the cliche he said was, when a teacher learns or teaches, the nation leads. He put a responsibility on higher education institutions, those who are doing well, who have the resources, for example, the IITs and the IIM, to help the other institutions, the second-tier institutions, to become much better in their different activities. Therefore, he made an appeal to the higher education institutes to conduct all kinds of activities in order to implement the NEP. And mother tongue, in India, we have in some places a 3-language formula, in other places we have a 2-language formula. 3-language meaning the national language, which is Hindi, English, and the regional language. So we have that severe problem. He supported the students being taught until class 5 in the mother tongue. Multiple exit options from the graduate streams. It has several implications. What does one do when he leaves at the end of, in the middle of the course, and the course is 3/4 complete? A certificate and a diploma to be given, and they will be allowed to come back to the stream to complete the course. I'm not sure how easy it would be to implement it. However, this option is being provided. Now, Dr. K. Kasturirangan, he was the chairman of the Indian Space Research Organization, and he was given the task of leading a team of people, experts, to come up with the NEP. And a very clever interview, or a smart interview, a newspaper did an interview of Kasturirangan about some unsaid things in the policy, and they wanted the chairman of the drafting committee to explain these aspects. So the first question was, see, this policy has come after 34 years when this earlier policy was made. So what would they mean objectives of a revamp of the entire structure after 34 years? So you pointed out that transforming and creating a dynamic education system is fundamental for the progress of any country. We have several things in the environment changing, technological advancements, and so on. So in order to take care of these things, the new policy has been proposed according to him. You have said we need to have an open-minded approach to education. It's an abstract kind of a thing. So can you explain? He pointed out that education cannot be in watertight compartments. A chartered accountant, for example, cannot just study finance. So there needs to be diversity, because today there are so many opportunities. So one of the critical characters of NEP is flexibility. A major recommendation they asked is to allow foreign university to set up campuses in India. Will the powerful private college university lobby allow it to be implemented? Well, actually, it was a political decision when this was proposed during the last UPA, United Progressive Alliance government. And there was considerable resistance to foreign universities coming in from FDI coming into the country. And therefore, it was not really taken up seriously. But now the recommendation that is being made is that foreign universities will be allowed to set up campuses in India. At the moment, there is a smattering of foreign universities. For example, the University of Middlesex in the UK, Virginia Tech, they have got limited access to the Indian market. But this policy change recommends to allow foreign investors. So the explanation is, we are not talking about opening investments in India from any foreign university. We are looking at the top 100 or 200 and world-class Ivy League institutions. You know, there are two rankings that are popular in India. One is the QS, Cocorelli-Simons, and the other is THE, Times Higher Education processes. So in those rankings, those who come within the top 100 or 200, the number differs. And the idea is to open our minds to excellence. If you recall, Russia, for instance, has the same policy. They would allow foreign universities to collaborate with local universities only if they are in the top 100 or 200. Next serious question is that we have a large number of aspiring minds. The number of seats in premier institutions like the IITs, national law schools, are too few for an aspirational country like India. So you want to expand. In fact, a large number of new IITs have been set up all across the country. So this expansion, do you believe that this expansion will dilute quality? So, of course, obviously the answer would be we want to increase quantity, but at the same time, we want to retain high quality. Today, higher education in India is fragmented. As I pointed out earlier, they have 900 universities under the University Grants Commission. So the idea is to configure the entire system. They have recommended that the IITs become multidisciplinary. I have my own comments on this recommendation, because IITs indeed are multidisciplinary. IIT Kharagpur, which has the broadest scope, it has more disciplines than MIT, for instance, which is a highly multidisciplinary institution. Once we reconfigure, the seats can go up to over 20,000 for a university. Now, there are general universities which have large number of students, but the IITs typically have about 10,000 students. Over the last 20 years, original strength of 3,000 has become 10,000. But now we are talking about multiple disciplines, individual disciplines, and up to 20,000 students in a university is also being envisaged. So the goal should be to restructure, not just increase the intake. NEP has emphasized mother tongue or local language as medium of instruction up to class 5 or 8. Won't Indian children be at a disadvantage in a globalized world due to lack of English? So the point is being made that for children, it is easy for them to grasp subjects in mother tongue, particularly in the formative years of a child's life, because the brain responds to the mother tongue better. If someone wants to learn English in the 3-language formula, so be it. So that possibility is also pointed out. Teachers are the pillars of an education system. How has NEP 2020 addressed the teacher shortage, a problem that India has been struggling with for many decades? So what kinds of teachers do we want? So at the moment, we have Teachers Training Institute for technical teachers and teacher education institutions for general education, the B.Ed degree. The recommendation is that a separate cadre within the university system, a large multidisciplinary university, should also have teacher training departments and courses and so on. So teacher training will become a part of the entire system, and national professional standards for teachers will also be formulated. Rote learning and outdated evaluation seems to be the bane of our school and college education system. How do you think we can de-stress children and make education enjoyable? So again, the recommendation is we will move away from summative assessment to formative assessment, as it's being done in higher education. So it is not under 1 3-hour examination in each subject, which will determine the performance of the student, but year-long assessment of different types throughout the year. How do you think we can get our colleges and universities to do world-class research, which will eventually benefit society? We points out that research in our universities is highly unsatisfactory. Many universities may not agree with this, but in general, research-intensive teaching universities, I believe, are the solution. So when he says when you're in the frontiers of research, you get good teachers, meaning that if you are a good researcher, you will also be a good teacher. I give you one example here of Boltzmann, who was a great physicist, but I understand students used to shudder to go to his classes because his teaching was so bad. So it's not automatically so, but for a teacher to be more effective, he needs to have research competence. Let me point out here that one of the architects of the plan was Dr. Manjul Bhargava. He's a Fields Medal winner. He's in mathematics. Fields Medal is the equivalent of Nobel Prizes in physics, chemistry, mathematics, and so on. So he's a brilliant mathematician. Works at the Princeton University. He took leave from Princeton for 1 full year, working with the other members of the working group. So he points out a few things: a need for more multidisciplinary education, must unleash the interdisciplinary creativity of the student, holistic education, and he also points out that Indian tradition, studying the sciences through the arts and the arts through the sciences a long time ago. So breaking silos in education. And curriculum and pedagogy will be transformed, including the introduction of subjects for the 21st century. Examples are artificial intelligence, design thinking, holistic health, organic living, environmental education, and global citizenship education at relevant stages. I have my own comments pointing out that the education policy, what is the purpose of an education policy? It gives the nation an opportunity to review the past, look at the experiences, we have got the feedback, and chart out a future in consonance with the emerging global environment and national aspirations. For example, each policy has made important changes. The 1986 policy served to combine technical and management education. It created AICTE and the accreditation system for quality assurance. The overarching intent of NEP, it has been pointed out earlier, really the policy recommends consolidating HEIs from about 900 universities and 40,000 colleges, a very large system, to about 15,000 high-quality multidisciplinary institutions. Like the Carnegie classification of research universities in the US, here the classification will be into 3 types, combining research and teaching in different proportions. Type 1 with primary focus on research, type 2 on both research and teaching, and type 3, the autonomous colleges would be required to focus on teaching. Another important recommendation is the setting up of the National Research Foundation. Now, I want to point out here the focus on liberal studies these days that is being emphasized. I want to say the following. It's fashionable to say that professional education should integrate general or liberal education, liberal studies, and that too to the extent of about 25%. I point out that we are living in a technological age where even common people are exposed to a wide spectrum of technology devices. Therefore, it seems more appropriate to provide technology literacy to general learners. It's important to integrate STEAM learning into general education. STEM became STEAM with the introduction of arts. As a rule, we are all engineers and engineering teachers. We realize that engineering curricula incorporate about 50% of liberal studies already. This includes engineering ethics, environment, science and technology, civics, constitution, sustainability, and so on. Therefore, it is not that we do not have liberal education in our programs. And finally, the implementation issues. The success of the policy you will see only when it is implemented. And there are several challenges and trade-offs required, for example, between quality and excellence and so on. So, but we have achieved a bit of success in starting new institutions and implementing what existed in older institutions into the new institutions, the new IITs and NITs. I was part of a review committee for a couple of IITs, and I found that if you have the appropriate dedication and commitment and help from the government in terms of funding and so on, and you keep setting up standards for high quality research and teaching, for example, employ only PhD holders into your faculty cadre, then it is possible to achieve the same level of excellence as the older ones. We need more resources. People have been saying that, but the GDP has never exceeded about 2%. The recommendation is that it should be rise to 6%. You must all realize that education is a resource-intensive sector. And the other issue is faculty crunch. Make faculty positions or faculty members respectable in society. If we do that, I'm sure you can attract a large number of young people in order to do this. We have learned a lot from the implementation of the TechWIP program, the Technical Education Quality Improvement Program. We have brought out a good governance guide, which gives excellent guidelines on how to govern, how to provide leadership with appropriate guidance. So because engineering is a practical profession, we also need a symbiotic and synergistic relationship between the university sector and the industry sector. We must make changes from the old to the new, but the transition should be a smooth one without any disruption. And because it is an India-centered policy, a policy should also include Indian cultural traditions. Otherwise, it will not satisfy the ambitions of the people. And at the moment, we are looking at a harmonious integration of education and skill development, which is a good thing indeed. And we should look at the profile of the future and futuristic student, the additional skills that have been pointed out, and they must be incorporated in our curriculum and pedagogy. In 1986, the policy document was followed by a program of action document, essentially focusing on implementation. Implementation. So I will stop here. What I have done is to provide you some highlights of the policy. If there are any issues to be discussed, I will be happy to do so.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Natarajan, for such a thorough but concise presentation, which really summarizes several hundreds of pages. I actually saw the report online, and it's amazing how you have been able to condense it down. I'll give an opportunity for a few of the IFEES leaders to make any comments if they want to, but we have several comments from the audience as well. Let me just check if Ala Ashwami, incoming president of IFEES, would like to make a few comments, or Michael Milligan, CEO of ABET, would you like to just jump in and maybe make a couple of comments if necessary? Michael, I see you're unmuted.
Yeah, sure, happy to do so. Very, very interesting and very impressive overall for certain. I think the commitment to improving the quality of education throughout the country is really important and welcome. I did have a couple questions though. What is the risks and dangers of online education? Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Please say that again.
Yeah, you had mentioned the risks and dangers of online education. Could you just touch on that for just a minute?
No. The fact that it is not liked by students very much, teachers also don't seem to like it, and both teachers and students haven't yet learned the protocol of how to make this process an effective and interesting one.
Okay.
Feedback seems to say that neither teacher nor the student seem to like it.
Okay. All right. Very good. Okay. Well, thank you. And thank you very much for presenting this morning. This was excellent.
And thank you, Michael. Ala, do you want to jump in?
I was just going to ask the same question that Michael asked about online education, but then he was quicker. The other question that I have is regarding the labs and how well the labs are equipped to take on the new education policy? Are there any impacts on labs and how they're funded, and whether there will be enough of them to equip all these new universities that
I don't think they've gone to that extent of detail, but then they would enable the institutions and the institutional leaders to design, the kind of education that will. Recently, I read an article that even today we are focusing too much on mechanical engineering kind of thing, and we are not graduated into the digital technologies and the other aspects. Therefore, I think there will be a revamping of the nature of laboratory instruction. The other challenge is if your face-to-face instruction is not possible, and if the students cannot get to the labs, and then under guidance conduct experiments which will help them in professional practice, then remote labs and virtual labs, I believe they have a limited, they can only achieve limited success. But there are several attempts to do them better. And the policy does not go into such detail as to define what these should be.
Okay, a couple of other questions, comments here, and let's see. We have a Milind Shah is asking about research grants that are very important. Now, currently, most of them go to the government institutes. I hope this will change, and good private institutions will also get grants. What's your thoughts on that?
Krishna, you're not right in saying that all sponsored research grants go only to.
I'm not the one saying it. Milind Shah, one of the participants, is saying that.
Okay. Okay. Even today, there are several avenues for research funds to flow to private institutions, provided they can also provide quality research results. All our funding organizations, including the 3 strategic sectors of space, defense, and nuclear energy, plus Department of Science and Technology, Department of Biotechnology, I have also been on the other side, being on evaluation committees for providing grants, and not much difference between good private institutions and good public institutions. The avenues are there, the possibilities are there.
Okay, the whole emphasis on multidisciplinary education is very important, and as Deepak says, how would you implement it? What do you see some of the challenges? And I'm sure you mentioned it, but maybe you can repeat it a little bit to tell us how this might happen in the next few years. Going to multidisciplinary
challenges. One is to introduce new disciplines in an existing institution and build it up to the same level of excellence as existing institutions. And secondly, the manpower required to deal with interdisciplinary issues. At the moment, there are silos. Even today, there are so many silos between departments and disciplines. So they need to be removed, and a strong emphasis has been placed on this.
Okay, question about, I think you mentioned something about the Indian Education Service, IES. Is there something like that you was in the policy?
Yes. That was a recommendation made when the earlier government was in power. But like you have the Indian Administrative Service, the Indian Forest Service, and so on, to have an Indian Education Service, which will provide separate avenues for developing teachers and pedagogy in the education sector. We have in general education, we have the B.Ed programs, the Bachelor of Education programs, which is a necessity for a person to become a teacher in schools. But at the university level, as you know, we do not have such a stream. And a recommendation was made during the earlier government that it should be established, but the new policy, I don't believe, talks about it.
Okay, you said something about the quality of, okay, a question about the infrastructure. Okay, we have the National Research Council, obviously will provide some funding for research, but how about the required research infrastructure? Is there some provision for that? Because that's important for the quality of education.
Again, apart from the feel-good statement that infrastructure should be improved, if the funding increases to 6% of GDP, I'm sure funds can be found for enhancing the infrastructure. And in this, we also need the assistance of the industry and business. Without them, I don't believe we can, or just the university alone can develop the infrastructure.
Okay. With that, I'm going to let's see. We have we have a few more questions, but I think we're running out of time. I'm going to have Hans Hoyt say a few words at this point. Hans, come in.
Thank you very much, Krishna. Dr. Natarajan, inspiring the vision that you've articulated. Before I make a comment about a future event, what I was very much impressed in is the importance, if I heard you correctly, of the quality of the Indian culture to be integrated in the thinking and the program. I find it very fascinating, and not too many people openly, globally talk about those kinds of things. It's very, very interesting. The other question, again, we don't have the time, the critical issue of the needs of industry. How will this change that the academic reality can better, moving forward the next 10 to 20 years, to meet those industry needs per se? These are just questions that obviously we are talking about not only in India, but at a global level. A final comment, I'm just delighted, and we feel just really pleased that you took the time to share this incredibly exciting and complex vision. Both IUCEE, IFEES, and GEDC, we're very happy to facilitate this conversation here. And for those of you who are not only from India, but globally, we have an excellent participation today. I want to invite all of you, make you conscious of our annual global virtual event in a couple of weeks. Instead of being in Africa, we're coming together virtually. And I very much want to emphasize for you to participate yourselves, encourage your colleagues, faculty, students. Students' engagement is very powerful, very, very fascinating to see this year. With that, thank you kindly for this quality presentation. We are deeply grateful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Natarajan, and thank you for the audience here. About 130 people here have joined us, and thank you, everybody, and have a good evening. Those of you in India, those of you in other parts of the world, have a good day, and be happy, be safe, and be healthy. Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Peace be with you, all of you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Krishna. Thank you, Nat.